And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. This is the pre-show for the 220 1002 A+ study group for August. We're not quite ready to go yet, which is why you have this lovely view of the back of my head. Eventually, there will be a better view. You'll be able to see me up close. Hi. We really are here. This really is live. You will get a better view once we get things going. I have plenty of questions for you today. Right now, I'm planning out everything I need to get this party started. So let's see if I actually have things ready to go. That's not the right button. That's the right button. Let's see if we get a green light there. We do. Green light over here. It's very unusual. YouTube has changed their setup, their configuration for their live view. And it has a real-time display of what's coming from YouTube, which I guess is nice, but I don't really want that display. Some of this is pretty nice, though. Gives me an idea of concurrent viewers. It's all on the same screen. I wonder if I can get rid of some of this. I can change some of the names on the fly. So it's nice to see some updates there. Today we got all Q&A for the 220 1002. Almost said 902. It's not the 902. We haven't done a 902 study group in 6 months, so I'm not sure what's wrong with me. Well, I sort of know what's wrong with me. You know what I'm saying. We've got that in the first hour, and then the second hour is all call-in, if you want to, or put questions in the chat room. Either way. You're welcome to join us if you're watching on YouTube live. You may want to pop over to the website where the chat room is at professormesser.com/live, where I don't know if anybody's there or not. So if you're there, feel free to tell me that you're here and joining us, maybe where you're joining us from. I see Orlando is here. Good to see that Orlando, Florida. Yeah, it's got to be warm down there. I'm also in Florida, so there's a little bit of heat here in the northern part of Florida as well. Here's some folks joining us. Welcome, everybody. I need to figure out, can you turn that up? What if I pause it? But if I pause this, does it pause the live stream? I can't imagine. How do you stop the live stream now? This is a good call. Oh, there it is, in stream. That was one of those things. Now, if I pause this, I'm hoping that doesn't change anything on my screen. That's important. We should probably look and see what it looks like. How about that? That would be a good idea. So if I click play, that would be a good idea. So if I click play, boy, that's really fast. There's hardly any latency these days. Welcome, Arlington, Texas. Vegas is back. Orange, California, assuming the OC. We've got Seattle is here. A lot of West Coast checking in. Hello, West Coast. Good to see you. There's Maryland. East Coast is finally here. Laurel, Maryland. My Maryland is here. We've got, we did one of these 2 days ago, of course. Our 1001 was on Tuesday. This is Thursday. For those of you that either don't know what day it is or you're watching this on the replay, 2 days ago we did our 1001. And because it's August, usually we get a group of folks from Europe, but now all of Europe is on vacation. So we don't get much Europe on the August study groups. They'll be back next month. They'll be back. Do not worry. Get to see all of that. This gives me updates on how the stream is going. Normally I can see, it does show me the status of the stream. I wish it gave me more statistics. I'm that kind of person. I like a lot of detail when I'm looking at these things. What it tells me is that excellent connection. That's what it tells me the stream is. It's an excellent connection. For those of you that don't know how this works, I send YouTube a stream, and then YouTube crunches it up. They re-render it into many different forms that you will then receive on your device. So, for instance, if you're on a mobile device, you may not be receiving 1080p video. You may be receiving 720p because your mobile device doesn't need 1080p. 720 is about the best you'll get out of a number of those older devices, so it sends you 720. Now, I'm sending YouTube 1080, so they can just split it up from there into smaller bits. So if you're in a situation where you have low bandwidth or maybe a limited amount of bandwidth, you can go to the cog wheel at the bottom and you can adjust exactly what resolution you'd like to see. Maybe the lower resolutions will work a little better for you. There's my updates on the screen that tells me that that was ready to go. Let's see if the tweeter is going to send out the tweet. Did I put one out there? I think I did. Yeah, I did. I did this morning. So I know it will be sending, what have I done? Where am I? What am I doing? It will send one out in just a moment. Get to see that too. There's Toronto. Welcome, Toronto. I spent some time this summer in Hamilton and spent some time this summer in Vancouver. I did both sides of Canada this summer, which was kind of nice. So we got our Canada on pretty good amount. We got plenty of Canada, which was nice. Got to get, I think I've got everything done. I did the pre-show. I just finished the script that goes in front of the podcast. That's been done. Recordings are going here. Recordings in the back. Recordings online. That's good. Okay, got network administrator in Hamilton recently. Very good. There's Saskatchewan also checking in CA, the Canada. Always nice to have you here. Yeah, I think I swapped out all my Canadian dollars. I had to swap them off to pounds because I was going to a pound place. Nigeria's here. Welcome. And now I've got pounds in my wallet and I don't know what to do with them. I got to get those swapped out at some point. All right, that's ready to go. Everybody's good here. Boy, this is flying along. I thought I would have plenty of time. I usually do this. I sit down. There's a certain cadence, a certain set of things that I do prior to the live stream so that I know an hour beforehand everything is turned on. I know everything works. That way, if I run into a technical issue of some kind, which sometimes happens, I have at least an hour to figure it out. Sometimes that's not long enough, but that's what I do to figure it out. Sometimes that throws everything off, but today I was able to get everything done early, get all of the things in place. It almost messes me up because I'm expecting certain things to happen right now, but I've already done them. So now I have to remember that I've already done them, which is another challenge. Let's get this ready to go. That looks good. This is outstanding. So we've got about 2.5 minutes, just under, before we'll get started. Thanks for being here. We've got the 221,002 A+ study group today. Next Wednesday is Network Plus. The Wednesday after that's Security Plus. Haven't actually written those yet. So hopefully I can do that, I don't know, Friday, tomorrow, Saturday. Sometime in there we will get both. I'll try to get both of those done in a single day. That way I don't have to worry about them. I hate having to do one every week because it takes about half a day to prep one of these. If you have questions, best time to call will be in the second hour. So we've got an hour from now. We'll be opening up the phone lines. You can also put questions in the chat room. That will be in an hour. I'll give you plenty of instructions and directions on how to do that. There's Lancaster, PA. Welcome. It's got to be nice up there. So I would think the Northeast right now has got to be pretty good. Toronto's got to be pretty good right now. All you folks in Canada are probably loving the summer right now. It's later on that it becomes an issue. That's one of those things that Florida's great, but we really only have 2 seasons. We have oppressive and not as oppressive. Those are our 2 seasons. We usually work through them that way. Dallas is here. Welcome, Dallas. We've got less than a minute. We'll get started on this. Do I have everything I need? I think I do. Gettysburg is here. More Pennsylvania checking in. All right. I think we're in pretty good shape here. Oh, there's nope, that's something else. Why am I getting mail there? We'll have to find out later. Garland, Texas, welcome. Buffalo. Oh, I should have worn my Buffalo t-shirt. That's where we stayed when we went up to Canada this summer. I had to stay in Buffalo and have wings because that's what you do, right? If you're a tourist in Buffalo. Didn't stay there very long. It was really a fly-in, fly-out kind of thing, but it was very nice. So that's always a good time. It's about time. Speaking of time, it's about time to get started. So let's do a study group, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2019 Professor Messer 220 1002 A+ study group, coming to you live from Messer Studios here in Tallahassee, Florida. Thanks for joining us. We've got so much to go through today. I've got Q&A in this first hour from the 220 1002 A+ exam objectives. And then in the second hour, I'll open up the phone lines and you can ask me questions. We'll turn it around. You can ask questions in the chat room. You can call in. We've got plenty of things to go through once we get to all of those questions and things that we're going to look at. Maybe you'll be able to tell me what we should be doing for questions next time. Speaking of what we're doing this time, here's our study group details. We'll talk more about the studio line and calling in that second hour. Don't forget that every single one of our videos that we make are available to watch on the YouTube. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube. If you're looking to help us, hit that subscribe button. I know everyone says that, but there's a reason. YouTube pays a lot of attention to that subscribe button, which is great because now I have someone at YouTube that I can talk to all the time. They invite us to a number of different events and keep us updated with what's going on YouTube. So it does make a difference. So thank you. There's also the daily A+ pop quiz. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. I will at some point in this first hour give you a super secret code word that you could use to earn a digitally signed email from me that certifies that you must have been here watching this. Some people like to use that for continuing education unit credit. Some people might just collect them. I'm not sure why, but there it is. You're more than welcome to do that. I'll give you instructions on how to do that later on. I realize a number of you are not collecting CEUs these days. Many of you are simply using the CertMaster CE, or you're getting a higher level certification. But there are still a number of you that do collect these CEUs, so I will give you instructions sometime during this first hour. Be listening out for that. Well, of course, now, finally, this is the first 220 1002 study group where I could say that is the only 1002 second edition exam that's available right now. The 900 series exams, at least the English language version of the 900 series exams, were retired about half a month ago. So on July 31st, those exams went away. The only exams you will be taking if you're taking an English language exam is the 220 1002 or the 220 1002, or I guess you're taking both of them. There is folks that will be still taking the 900 series until October 31st if you are taking it in a language other than English. So some of you, this may apply. You may have taken the 901 and then you may have realized I didn't finish the 902 in time. But if you speak Spanish or German or any of the other languages they support, you could still take your 902 exam in that language and you'll still be A+ certified. So there is a little bit of a catch there. You can work through that. This version of the exams, though, the 1001, 1002, have been around since January, though. We've already had study groups since January. I guess February was our first study groups that did the 1000 series. So this is relatively new to have this here. It's exactly the same configuration and setup as the 900 series. So you have 90 minutes to take the exam. You can get a maximum of 90 questions. You need to get a 675 on the first exam. That is from a scale between 100 and 900. And then you have to get a 700 on the 220 1002. That's the exam that we will talk about today. Now, if you've been studying for the 900 series and you didn't make it in time and now you have to shift gears over to the 1000 series, one of the things you'll notice is that a lot of the content's the same. I went through and counted all of the objectives in the new exam that have changed since the 900 series, and about 20% of the exam is different. So there are enough changes to make a difference on your final score. So don't walk into the exam having studied for a 900 series. You'll sit down on this 1000 series and 20% of the content will not be something you studied. So make sure you're very familiar with that. We're going to go through just the 220 1002 right here on the right side of the page. So all of our questions today will deal with operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, operational procedures, and potpourri. Well, there won't be a lot of potpourri, but those will be the four topics we go through. There is also a replay that I make available. Usually it's available immediately after this on YouTube of the video replay. Some of you like to have an audio replay, and you're more than welcome to go to professormesser.com/podcast and add this to your podcast listening program. You can also listen to it in the audio form directly from that page as well. That is professormesser.com/podcast. And yes, that is free. There's no charge to do that. It's a standard podcast that you could use, no additional costs or anything extra that you have to do. So you're more than welcome to enjoy that. And it's exactly the same as what you're watching now, except it's in an audio form. I'll also let you know that my marketing manager, Lori, will go through and listen to this entire podcast/video replay, and she will put timestamps into the YouTube video description. That way, if there's a question that you're trying to remember or you'd like to go to a specific caller and replay some of that information, you can simply pull open the YouTube video description, click on the timestamp, and it will take you directly to that question. So our thanks to Lori for doing that. We've been doing that almost a year now, maybe just over. So it really does make a difference if you're trying to find a specific type of content. Just keep that in mind as well. I will be asking you questions today. Your questions will be listed online if you're watching this live. Now, if you're not watching this live, this won't work. But if you are watching live, you can pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. And that will get you to the first question that we have available. You will see that on your screen if you do that right. There's also an app that you can load onto your mobile device. You want the Socrative Student app, and you can load that up and go to a specific room that is named Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure that you have that spelled properly, so you will see the question that is waiting for you. And the questions that's there, it's one from last month. We call this our rewind question. It's our warm-up question. It's our question to see if you're able to get into all of the systems and pull up the questions and see what's available. The question that's there asks, a user in the EU would like to remove all of their personal information from a website. Which regulation provides protection of this data? And you have a number of options available. If you go to professormesser.com/QA, you will see FOSS, PCI DSS, HIPAA, GDPR, and PII. And you can see in real time, I get to see your answers as you're locking in what you think the right answer is. We'll see it right here on the screen. So a user in the EU would like to remove all of their personal information from a website. Which regulation provides protection of this data? Is it FOSS, PCI DSS, HIPAA, GDPR, or PII? And you can see 62% of you have chosen GDPR. 21% of you have chosen HIPAA. 8% said it's PII. 6% say it's PCI DSS, and 3% say that it is FOSS. Now, if you were here last month, then you probably remember that it is the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR. This is an EU thing. So those here of us in the United States, it's still not exactly clear how the United States fits into the GDPR. They are telling us in the U.S. that we have to comply with these regulations as well. But these regulations legally don't apply to people in the United States. So there's a little bit of weird international law craziness going on with this that I'm sure will get worked out as time goes on. I think most of the folks in the United States, including us here at Messer Studios, have updated our privacy policy. We've made it so that if you wanted to submit information on removing data, we'll tell you what type of data you could remove and the type of data we're not able to remove, because there are rules and regulations in the United States that require us to keep certain kinds of information, even if you don't want us to. Usually it's financial information. The IRS doesn't like it when you start deleting things like that. It's surprising. Who knew that the tax or organization would be worried about that? GDPR is your right answer there. So if you were wondering, those folks who answered D, GDPR, 65% got it right. HIPAA, HIPAA, is the regulation associated with medical information. Well, nothing about this question said anything about medicine, said nothing about blood work or medical records, so HIPAA would not apply. PII is a pretty generic term, meaning your personally identifiable information. PII itself describes what that data is. It does not describe a regulation of that data. And for instance, GDPR is the regulation that regulates PII, as does HIPAA to some degree, because medical information is certainly personally identifiable. PCI DSS is the PCI, the payment card industry's data storage system, data security. They are responsible for making sure our credit cards are secure when we use them and when they are stored. So that can be useful if they have that. And then FOSS, the free and open source software, is one that is not a regulation at all to have that. So there you go. Yes, in the chat room, they're reminding me of all of the bad things that could happen, all of the penalties if you do not follow the GDPR. We're here in the United States. We don't have to follow the GDPR. Or they tell us we do, but we're not sure that we do. And quite honestly, I doubt anyone's going to be paying 4% of their annual profits in the United States if they happen to run into that ridiculous scenario. So that's one of those where I'm sure the United States will catch up eventually with privacy and all of those types of things. But we have a different culture of privacy in the United States than we have in Europe, for example. So it's probably going to be something relating to how we handle things here in the U.S. They'll do one that's a United States centric, and it will be pretty close to what they're doing in Europe. I am certain of that. So let's move forward. Now that we've gotten an idea of how this works, we've submitted a question, we've got some of the answers. You can get there and see the information that's there. You can, of course, now follow along with new questions. I have brand new questions you have not seen yet. Now, one of the things I like to do on the first question of every study group is I like to give you a performance-based question. Some of you may not realize on the A+ exams, the first handful of questions you get will not be multiple choice questions. They'll be more involved questions that will expect you to perform something at a command prompt. Maybe they'll ask you fill in the blank questions. Maybe it's a drag and drop question, or you have to put things in a particular order. Maybe it's matching. You just never know what you're going to run into. So if you go back over the last year of study groups, you can go to the very first question, and it's always a performance-based question. So if you need more testing and more help with performance-based, that might be able to help you there as well. Today, I have a matching question for you. So here is the matching question, our very first question of the day. That is a performance-based question, and it asks, match the Windows utility to the description. So I have 6 different utilities, and I have, this makes it very easy, 6 different descriptions. So it's a 1-to-1 that we're going to figure out here. The exam may not do this, by the way. The exam may give you more descriptions than there are utilities. So there might be some left over at the end. I didn't make this one that hard. So I'm giving you 6 utilities that 1-to-1 match with the 6 descriptions. So for those of you listening in, let's go through these 6 different utilities. The first one is DISM. The second is check disk. The third is DIR. The fourth is Xcopy. The fifth is format. And the sixth is SFC. So those are your 6 utilities: DISM, check disk, DIR, Xcopy, format, and SFC. So keep those in mind. And then we have 6 different descriptions that you can go through. The 6 descriptions are: prepare a drive before storing files. The second is duplicate files and directory trees. The third is check for invalid OS files. The fourth is update the drivers on a Windows image. The fifth is list all files on a drive. And the last is correct local file system errors. Now, if you think you know the answers, please do not answer them in the chat room. Don't give me any hints in the chat room. You want to go to this link right here at the bottom, professormesser.com/QA. lock your answer in there. You'll find this particular question is a fill in the blank when you go online. I'm really just looking for you to match these up. If you think they're already matched up, for example, you would put into the online system 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, and 6F. Now, of course, it is not already matched up. You have to figure out the matching, but you don't have to type everything in. So that should help you as you're putting in the questions and the answers. So as we're putting those in, for those listening in, let's go through these one more time so maybe you can match them together in your mind. The first is DISM, check disk, DIR, Xcopy, format, and SFC. So here are the 6 descriptions. One is prepare a drive before storing files. The second is duplicate files and directory trees. The third is check for invalid OS files. The fourth is update the drivers on a Windows image. The fifth is list all files on a drive. And the last is correct local file system errors. So we want to match up how those different utilities are described. This is a good example of what you will see on the exam. For instance, some of these are abbreviations, they're acronyms, but the exam doesn't often ask you, here's DISM, what does DISM stand for? You're never going to get a trivia question like that on the exam. The exam has very few trivia questions on it. That's a situation where it's useful, of course, to know what the abbreviation DISM stands for. It's more important that you know what that is and how it works and when you should use it. So those are the important parts that you have to worry about, is understanding how I'm going to be able to use that utility, even if we don't even remember what those letters stand for. And I got to tell you, in our industry, there's so many different acronyms and so many different things. Some of these acronyms we use all the time. For instance, I have on your motherboard, there's a PCIe adapter slot. And we almost always call it the PCIe adapter slot. We almost forget what PCIe stands for because we never use the name, but we know what it is. So that's the important part as we're going through this. So I see a number of you have locked in those answers. Let's go through and see how you did with this one. The first one is DISM, and you can see DISM matches D, update the drivers on a Windows image. That's the DISM is your image system utility. So if you're working at all with Windows WIM files, those image files need some way to be managed. And we use the DISM utility to be able to manage those. The second was check disk. Check disk matches to F, correct local file system errors. Check disk, of course, can be used to identify physical errors on a disk. But of course, it also is very good at finding logical file system errors as well. DIR is a directory command, lists the files that are on a drive. Indeed, lists all the files on a drive. Xcopy, it's better than copy. It's Xcopy. It allows you not only to duplicate files, but duplicate entire directory trees with one single command. It helps as well. The format command, it allows you to prepare a drive before storing files. That's creating that file system. You can't store files until you format the drive with some type of file system, and format allows you to do that. And then the system file checker, SFC, checks your operating system to make sure that all the operating system files are valid. Nothing has gone wrong with those operating system files. So that's one that can really, really help you out. So very quickly, as we go through this, you can see one is one is DISM, which is update the drivers on a Windows image, among other things. DISM can be used for many different functions, but that is one of the things that it does. Check disk will correct local file system errors. DIR will list all files on a drive. Xcopy will duplicate files and directory trees. Format will prepare a drive before storing files, and SFC will check for invalid operating system files. Those are your options, your Windows utility, and all of the descriptions to be able to see exactly how you can manage these utilities. And by the way, this is just a few of the utilities you would run into on the exam. Make sure you go to the exam objectives where they list all of the descriptions, all of the utilities. Everything is listed there. People don't often understand that the exam objectives are a catalog. They're a complete document of pages and pages and pages of information of exactly what will be on the exam. Make sure you take advantage of that. So well done with that. I see a number of you. I'm just looking through the answers that came in. A lot of you did very well with that one. So nice job. Now, one of the challenges with this, and this is a question that came into the chat room, is that you've now got 6 answers here. You might have only got 4 of them right or 3 of them right. Do you get partial credit on the exam? Well, CompTIA has answered that question in their frequently asked questions list on their website, and they have told us that the answer is maybe. That's the answer. That is exactly the answer they gave in the frequently asked questions, which was some questions they give partial credit on. Other questions they don't give partial credit. Not an answer. I'm with you. I agree. But that was what they put on their website. You'll find that CompTIA and other companies that have these certifications for IT or just certification exams in general, they're very, very sketchy with telling you details about how they're graded. They just aren't going to tell you to have all of those things happen. So make sure that you go through and understand all of what's being asked of you, and you just do the best you can. That's all we can really ask. That there's nothing more you can really do but do the best and hope for that their grading system works out for what you want to be able to do. So hopefully that will work for you as well. Let's go through and do some more questions. I have another one for you. Let's get to multiple choice questions. This one might be a little bit easier for us. The question asks, which of the following would be the best way to control ESD? Which of the following would be the best way to control ESD? Would it be disconnect the power cord when working inside of a computer? Would it be to use antivirus or anti-malware software? Would it be to maintain humidity levels over 60%? Would it be use cloth gloves when working with components, or would it be to use a grounded electrical connection? Those are your 5 different options for controlling ESD. Which of the following would be the best way to control ESD? Those options again are disconnect the power cord when working inside of a computer, use antivirus or anti-malware software, maintain humidity levels over 60%, use cloth gloves when working with components, and lastly, use a grounded electrical connection. So go through all 5 of those, see what you think the right answer is. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. And this makes a good point, because someone in the chat room said, wait, I have an answer that wasn't listed, which is a very common scenario. In fact, that's the reason I wrote the question this way, because they tell you which of the following would be the best way. They don't give you every option available in the world. They say, of these 5 things, of these 4 or 5 things, which of these would be the best way? In fact, maybe the thing you're thinking about for some reason is not available to you, so you have to use one of these 5 things. You never know exactly the scenario you're going to be in. You may be in a situation where you have to improvise, and you need to understand of these 5 different things, which it would be the best way to control ESD. Hopefully, you know what these happen to be. ESD, a little bit of a challenge because I have found that some materials in preparation for this exam are just wrong. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. There's your 5 options available for controlling the ESD. Hopefully this is one you're familiar with. Let's see how we did. I think we've stumbled around for this. This is one that should be good. Let's see how we did. Well, we're a little torn. 50% of us say use a grounded electrical connection. 32% say disconnect the power cord when working inside of a computer. 11% said to maintain humidity levels over 60%. 5% say use cloth gloves when working with the components. And 1% say to use antivirus or anti-malware software. Well, this will be one that I think all of us will be surprised about when we're talking about controlling electrostatic discharge. That's what ESD is, electrostatic discharge. If you're ever in a situation where you have the ability to increase the humidity of a particular room to 60% or more, you will find that there will not be a lot of electrostatic discharge. Very little electrostatic discharge. One of the problems you have, though, of course, when you are working with electrostatic and working with static electricity in general, and working in an environment like you're working in a desk, you probably don't want to have humidity at 60% as you're working through this. It's not very practical. Will it hurt your computer components? No, it's not going to hurt your computer components to have a higher humidity than that. In fact, that's probably in the range. If you look at the statistics of what your computer can handle, that's certainly in the range of what it certainly is able to do. But the reality is that most of the time we're cooling down our data centers, we're cooling the environments that we work in, and air conditioning is conditioning the air and naturally is removing humidity from the air to do that. So that's one where that certainly will certainly control ESD, no question. The other thing you can think about doing is using your hand to what we call self-ground, which in reality is not grounding at all. It's more of a colloquialism we use in our industry, and it's a term that unfortunately has confused a lot of people, and a lot of books that I have read about this, which are always wrong. The static electricity, as the name literally says, is static. It does not move. It's electricity that is just sitting there. The only time it's going to move is if the potential of the electrical potential between two devices is different. It will move to that other device to equalize itself. So this is one of these challenges, is that you want to be sure that whatever you're working on has the same electrical potential as you. And one of the best ways to do that is to simply reach out and touch part of the metal chassis of the computer, so that suddenly now you have equalized the electrical potential between you and that component that you're working on. This assumes, of course, if you're working inside of a computer, that you have unplugged the power cord. Never, 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 never work inside of a computer that is still connected to a power source. I'm not sure I can be clearer there, but somehow it doesn't work very well unless I say it twice. Never, never, never work inside of a computer or any electrical component unless you have unplugged that device from a power source. You may be wondering, well, why is that important? Because you can electrocute yourself and die. That's why that's important. So anytime you see me talking about working inside of a computer, I'm telling you to always, always be disconnected from a power source. So make sure you know that. One of the other things I've seen, and this is an important clarification because I've seen books that actually tell you to do this, and it's absolutely wrong, is that you need to connect yourself to the electrical ground of your building in order to minimize electrostatic discharge. This is not only incorrect, it is incredibly dangerous. Do not connect yourself to the power system of a building. It sounds silly when you say it like that, doesn't it? Don't connect yourself to any part of the power system of a building. The ground that's in your building, the electrical ground that's part of your outlets that are in your building, are there in case there is another component that happens to short circuit or get electrical voltage along the other parts of that component. If that happens, the ground is there to literally send that voltage into the ground outside. That ground wire goes all the way down into a ground rod that goes about 8 feet down into the ground. It is connected with a copper cable. And that way, if there's ever an electrical accident of some kind, the electrical ground sends all of that voltage away from you and literally into the earth. That's why we call it a ground. So that's why if you connect to the electrical ground and another device has a problem with power, it will send that into the ground that you happen to be connected to. That's a bad day for you. You don't want that to happen. Never, never connect yourself to the ground. Never, ever have any connection at all to the electrical system of your building. Never, never. And if you're working with components, try just to touch the edges of those components. If there was an electrostatic discharge, it would discharge into the edge of the component. And usually there's no actual silicon on the edge that you would have to deal with. So let's go back to our question again. Of all of these things, of these 5 things, which would be the best way to control electrostatic discharge? I could almost choose 2. There's really only one best answer here. So let's go with the most popular one, which was use a grounded electrical connection. Well, I hope I have made a passionate plea to you at this point to have you never connect to the electrical system of any kind at any time. So it would not be E. Never use a grounded electrical connection. It does nothing to help control electrostatic discharge. That is not what you're trying to do. That's not what a ground is for in your electrical system. So it would not be E. 33% said disconnect the power cord when working inside of a computer, which of course is a great idea. You should always disconnect the power cord when working inside of a computer, but that doesn't actually help you control electrostatic discharge either. So our 2 top choices already thrown out the door. We have 5% of you said use cloth gloves when working with components. I would imagine cloth gloves are actually going to increase the amount of electrostatic discharge because they're cloth gloves. You're moving them around. That is not a good idea either. That's probably why you never see anyone using cloth gloves to work inside of their computer. Always a bad idea to have that there. And use antivirus or anti-malware software. Okay, that's not going to help you with static electricity. But at this point, we're trying to figure out what ESD was. If you didn't know what ESD was, then you might have said that. Any type of software is not going to help you with electrostatic discharge. The only answer here that makes any sense at all of these 5 things is to maintain humidity levels over 60%. Now, is that ideal? Probably not, but that was your only choice for this question. So if you were in that situation where you have these 5 options, that's actually the only one. No, it's not even just the best way, it's the only way to control electrostatic discharge is to maintain humidity levels over 60%. So that's the big answer here you should have focused on. Only 13% of us got that. Not a trick question. It is this is exactly, by the way, how the questions will be on your exam, is that the thing you think of as the obvious answer, which, by the way, the 2 most obvious answers to you should be use your hand to touch a piece of metal on the device you're working with. We sometimes call that a self-ground, but it's really you're creating the same electrical potential between you and the device you're working on. The other option was to use an ESD strap. It's a strap connected to you that you would then use an alligator clip to plug into a piece of metal, which effectively is doing that thing we were talking about where you're reaching out and touching it. This is just keeping you always touching that device. So electrostatic discharge straps are always good to have. People are asking me, are they wrong? No, they're absolutely right. Always do that. But that you didn't have that choice. You only had choice of 5 different things. Which of these things would be the best way to control ESD? I intentionally did not give you the option of an electrostatic discharge strap. That's too easy. I didn't give the option of touching a device. That's too easy. So I gave you perhaps the 3rd best to have that there. Now, on the chat room, by the way, this is another one of those things. Someone has seen this, and I've seen this also for sale. You can find them other places where it is an electrostatic wristband. It's a strap that you strap to yourself. And then on the other end is a plug that you would plug into a outlet here in the United States, but only the grounding part of it is what you would plug in. That is the thing that I'm telling you is incredibly dangerous, and never do. Never connect yourself to the electrical ground, which also, by the way, doesn't help with electrostatic discharge. After all of that, after them selling you something that could kill you, it still doesn't stop ESD. Go figure. I've seen books that actually have pictures of these telling you that's what you should do. Don't do that. Never do that. Now I have to be Smokey the Bear and tell you to never start a fire inside of the forest for some reason. It seems obvious. It seems obvious you shouldn't be connecting to an electrical system, but here we are. And that is the answer here that we were going after. Maintaining those humidity levels over 60% was your only option. If you chose C, got that one absolutely right for that one. So, and by the way, the reason that you don't connect to the ground system is not because they might have miswired the outlet. It's because you're connecting to an electrical system. Hopefully you can take that one home with you. That's another one of those that I always have to keep waving the flag on, unfortunately. Download the objectives and never connect to an electrical system. So hopefully we can reboot on this one. Let's do another one that maybe we're more familiar with and be able to do that and get there. This is one where that's a long question, but I think we'll be able to work through it. By the way, the questions on the exam are also kind of long questions too. But don't worry that they seem long. You will have to do a little bit of reading when you get to the questions on the exam. This question asks, Janet, a manager for the engineering team, travels extensively with her laptop. She would like to work on her documents even when her laptop is not in an area where a network connection is available. She would like all of her updated documents to automatically update in the corporate servers when a connection is restored. Which of the following would allow for this functionality? Would it be Sync Center? Would it be File Manager? Would it be BitLocker? Would it be Windows Domain Services? Or would it be Internet Options? Those are your 5 different options. So Janet, a manager for the engineering team, travels extensively with her laptop. She would like to work on her documents even when her laptop is not in an area where a network connection is available. She would like all of her updated documents to automatically update on the corporate servers when a connection is restored. Which of the following would allow for this functionality? So your options are Sync Center, File Manager, BitLocker, Windows Domain Services, and Internet Options. If you think you know the answer to this one, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer if you're watching this live. If you're not watching this live, then you can just remember what the answer is. You can play along with us that way and figuring out all of those. Yes, we're going back to our previous question. People are going, yes, that's why they told you as kids not to stick anything in an outlet. That's exactly why they told you not to do that. Don't take that fork and put it in there. No. It's the adult version of what I'm telling you. Don't put a fork into an outlet. I just spent 5 minutes telling you, perfectly legitimate professionals, not to do that. We're still doing it. It's the same as when we were kids. Not much that's there. So this is one, by the way, this is a relatively long question. Not all the questions on the exam, thankfully, are this long. When you get to the Security Plus, all the questions on the exam seem to be this long. A lot of the questions on the exam are this long. The A Plus, fortunately, this is an outlier. But there are a number of questions that have a story. They have a scenario with them, and you do have to be pretty good at reading through them, picking out the important things, and then answering based on the answers that are there. You'll run into quite a bit of that with CompTIA exam questions. Microsoft has questions like that. Cisco has questions like that. You'll run into them quite a bit to have that there. So this is one of those that definitely you should be familiar with, though. It's certainly as a scenario that's common if you're someone who does work outside of the office and you're on a train, you're on a plane, you don't always have network connectivity. So it's nice to be able to work offline and then somehow be able to update everything when the connection is restored automatically. Just happens magically to be able to make that happen. Let's see how we did with this one. Let's click over and see how do we do. On 70% of you say it's Sync Center. 23% of you say Windows Domain Services. Almost a quarter of you say that. 4% say File Manager. 2% say BitLocker, and also 2% of you say Internet Options. Now, the reason you may not have gotten this one right, if you've done this before, is that it's a feature that people really don't seem to use a lot, but it's absolutely built into the Windows operating system, which is Sync Center, where you can specify one of those particular sets of files or folders on your computer and set those files up as offline files, even though they're on a network drive. You could say, I'd like to make those offline for me. Even though I'm not directly connected to the network, when I leave the building, I still need those files available. And allows you to work on the files, have everything there. And then when you connect back to the corporate network, magically those files will get updated out on the server. So that is one that comes very, very handy. It is not available in Windows Home versions, but it kind of makes sense. If you're a Windows Home user, you're probably not using this to synchronize files to a server, and then you're getting on a plane and traveling and you're resyncing to a server afterwards. You're probably going to want to have the professional version of Windows or the Pro version to be able to do that. Anyway, the way you do this is you look at the properties of the file and you click Always Available Offline, and it automatically makes them available for this synchronization process. Comes in handy to have that there. Sync Center is indeed the right answer. Didn't fool you guys. 70% of you got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer. 22% of you said Windows Domain Services, and Windows Domain Services is very useful for a centralized authentication function. There is, of course, the single sign-on functionality associated with domain services. The administrators of your Windows network are able to administer all of the different Windows systems using domain services, but domain services itself doesn't have this type of synchronization function for the end user. So this is not what you would use to be able to synchronize documents on a laptop when you're away from the network. 4% of you said File Manager. File Manager, again, great for managing files, but does not have that synchronization capability. That's not what it is doing. It is not the answer here that best describes what we were talking about. Would be BitLocker is an option for encrypting everything that is on a drive. And then Internet Options allows you to change the options available for your browser inside of Windows. So yes, if you are taking the 220-1002 exam, you are going to be doing a lot of Windows questions. So yes, there is definitely Windows associated with this. You should have been able to tell this was Windows when you saw the available options that popped up. And the exam is not going to tell you everything you need to know about it to be able to make that happen. That's one that I think should help as you're trying to figure out all of the details of what's available on the exam. That might be a good one that can help you out too. That Sync Center. You might want to, that is listed, of course, in the exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with that utility. You may not even notice that it's there. It's certainly part of the videos that I have in my 220-1002 course, but of course, not everyone is able to read through or listen to every single video that I have. One of the things I tell you is to make plenty of notes as you're going through these videos, but if you don't have time to watch every video, then you may not have time to make all of the notes for that. This is one where I've done this for you, though. I've gone through every single one of my videos. I have made notes on all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the details for all of my A+ videos, both the 220-1001 and the 220-1002, and they're available in my course notes PDF. It's a great way to summarize everything in one single place. These are the course notes here for the 220-1002, and they're broken up by the different videos. In fact, if you just wanted to click on a video, if you wanted to get the video on maybe system utilities, you can click on that and we'll go straight to the page dealing with the system configuration. There's my system utilities right here at the bottom. All of those links are in here. Everything that's from the videos is listed in the course notes. So just another way that you can summarize everything, have it all at a glance, immediately available, and have something that you can reference after you've read a book, you've watched the videos, you've done QA, you've done some hands-on. Here's something that can get that last little bit of study done for you. And of course, every single bit of this, all of the money that you would spend on these course notes goes back to keeping everything running here at the website. And we have both a digital and a physical version of it. This is the physical version of the course notes. Yep, they're written on paper. This is made from dead trees. So if you want a tree to be sent to you, a flattened out, but it's exactly the same information. It's just a physical edition of this. It's the 220-1002 course notes. And if you get the physical version, I send you a digital version for free. So you'll be able to download it immediately to be able to do that. Have a look at that if that's something that you think might help you with your studies. You can find out more at professormesser.com/1000notes. And I thank all of you that have already purchased these notes. It goes a long way to keeping this running, keeping the lights on. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. Let's do some more questions. I've got one here and available. Here's the next question on our list that asks, while a company is announcing a new product to the media, the company's website is overwhelmed with traffic requests from a single IP address. Because of this traffic, the web server is unable to serve any other requests. Which of the following would best describe this situation? Would it be man in the middle, zero-day attack, social engineering, spoofing, or denial of service? Those are our 5 options. So a company is announcing a new product to the media. The company's website is overwhelmed with traffic requests from a single IP address. Because of this traffic, the web server is unable to serve any other requests. Which of the following would best describe this situation? Would it be man in the middle, zero-day attack, social engineering, spoofing, or denial of service? One of those 5. If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer right there if you think you know what it is. This is one where if you ever get into a situation where you're trying to figure out a problem, break down the question, see what your available options are, and see if you can fit it into those. The 5 options you have in this case are 5 options that are also on the CompTIA exam objectives. So make sure you look at each one of those, because every single one of them is a legitimate thing. I didn't make any of those up. Some people say, you made that up. Nope, those are real. Very rarely do I make up something in an answer. Sometimes I do, because there's just not enough good answers in the real world to put in there, but I try not to do that. I try to give you real world answers. You just have to be able to determine that's not applicable to this particular situation, which is the situation you're in right now, is having to figure that out. But those 5 options, remember, don't answer in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. You want to go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Figure out what those happen to be. Those 5 different options. Let's see. I'm watching you put the answers in. I think we've got a good number of them there now. Let's see if we can have a look at how you did. Click the button. 79%. A large number of you say it's denial of service. 8% of you say it's a zero-day attack, almost a tie. 7% say it's man in the middle. 6% say it's spoofing, so almost a 3-way tie for second place. And then lastly, 2% of you say it's social engineering, of course. 2% probably not a strong number from a social engineering perspective. If something is trying to bring down a service, if somebody's trying to have something break, they're trying to make things fail, then it is denying you access to that service. A denial of service is the legitimate name of this. Sometimes people are able to take advantage of a particular vulnerability. For example, there are certain pieces of software in routers and operating systems that if you send just the right kind of crafted packet to that operating system or to that router, it puts that router into an overload state or causes that device to stop operating and stop responding. So that's one of the situations you might run into. That makes it very easy. Someone can send a single packet and bring down your whole system. That's painful, isn't it? Though you don't see those a lot, but there are situations with Cisco routers, with Microsoft Windows, and other operating systems as well, where that has been a problem in the past. Always stay patched. Pretty important. The real goal here is to make that device unavailable. It could be that you're just constantly overwhelming the server. It could be that you went to the back of the building and you turned the power off. Both of those are completely legitimate denial of service. So that's one of those things. Turning off the power, probably an easy one. I worked in a company, an insurance company. We had a denial of service situation where the mainframe computer was on the 4th floor, a coffee machine on the 7th floor. The water that went to the coffee machine, there was a water that plugged into the back of these corporate coffee machines. So you just put in the coffee, you hit a button, and the water comes out. You don't have to scoop the water in from the sink and put it in. That came disconnected over a weekend, and water was just flowing out of the coffee machine. It got onto the floor, and on our floors, there were these holes that were cored through the building floors, so you could go from floor to floor. The water flowed all the way down to the fourth floor and onto the mainframe. Now, fortunately, someone caught it before it hit the mainframe, but we ended up having to redirect and do a lot of things that did cause a number of services to be denied. So sometimes it's a coffee machine that causes your denial of service. And in fact, that is the right answer here. 78% of you got that one right. It is denial of service. That is the right answer. If you are watching this for continuing education credit, one of the things you can do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a link there for Contact Us. Make sure you follow this procedure exactly, because this is the procedure, and only by following this procedure will you earn the email. So if you click that Contact Us link, you'll be presented with a prompt to put in your name, put in your email address, make sure that's right, because I'm going to send you the email. See how that works? And then there's a subject line. If you could put that this is the August 2019 1002 A+ study group, that'd be really helpful to me. And then in the body of the message, or on the subject line, if you have room, put the words denial of service. That's what we're talking about. Denial of service is what I would like you to put somewhere in there. Please don't hide it in the message. It makes it harder for me to find these things, and I want to give this email back to you. So if something isn't formatted properly or I don't see it, it just gets deleted and then you don't get anything back. That doesn't help anybody. So make sure that you're familiar with that. This denial of service. In this example, by the way, folks are talking about this in the chat room, this denial of service was coming from a single IP address. There are some cases for denial of service where there would be an entire group of devices all working together, robots that are commanded into a botnet, and that botnet has a single person saying, "Go get them." And then you have hundreds or thousands of devices, all from different IP addresses, all hitting one device at the same time. We call that a DDoS, a distributed denial of service attack. That is probably one of the most prevalent types of DOS that you would find on the internet, is the distributed flavor. It is one that's relatively easy for botnet owners to be able to orchestrate. And sometimes that's the only thing you can do to overwhelm, is to come from many different places simultaneously and try to overwhelm a device. A very common way to do it. Let's shift gears a bit. I've got other questions for you. Let's go through the next question on our list. Here's a troubleshooting question for us. Let's see how we do. It asks, a user in the shipping department is reporting that an application vanishes while they're working, and they have to start the application again to continue working. Which of these would be the best next step for troubleshooting this issue? Would we reboot the computer, reinstall the application, check the event viewer, run a hardware diagnostic, or perform a defragmentation? So this is a scenario some of you may have run into this one before. It is a user in the shipping department is reporting that an application vanishes while they are working. They have to start the application again to continue working. Which of these would be the best next step for troubleshooting this issue? Is it reboot the computer, reinstall the application, check the event viewer, run a hardware diagnostic, or perform a defragmentation? If you think you know what the answer is, go to professormesser.com/QA. Open up a new browser window. You can answer the questions right there at professormesser.com/QA. So that QA stands for something. I'm not sure. But there it is. That will take you to the page where, if you are watching this live, you can answer this question, and we get to all see. Well, we don't get to see what your answer is. We get to see what everybody answers. I don't log your names or IP addresses. I don't get to see any of this. So you can feel pretty open with putting whatever you would like as an answer, because I don't track this. I don't save it. It's just for us to have fun with during the live stream. So this is one where this can be useful to know how to troubleshoot these application problems. And in fact, there's an entire section of the 220-1002 exam that's all about troubleshooting. So there's plenty of application troubleshooting, operating system troubleshooting. There's lots of troubleshooting topics right there in that last section. So you do have to be very familiar with perhaps what the best next step is going to be. And this is another question, by the way, where you only have 5 things to choose from. So you might in yourself think, I know what I'm going to do next. Well, that option is not available to you. These 5 options are the only thing that's available to you right now for whatever reason. Some people tend to think that CompTIA is trying to force you down a particular line, but they're not. They're telling you based on these constraints, here's the 5 possible things you could do. Pick one. I think it's a pretty good way to ask the question. We're going to see how you answered it. Let's flip over and have a look. A user in the shipping department reports an application vanishes while they're working. They have to start the application again to continue working. Which of these would be the best next step for troubleshooting this issue? How do we do? Well, 69% of you say check the event viewer. Is that really the right answer? 17% of you said to reboot the computer. I think that's a pretty valid troubleshooting task. Have you turned it off and back on again, right? That's sort of the universal answer. 7% said to reinstall the application. 4% said to perform a defragmentation. And 3% say to run a hardware diagnostic. So let's try to figure out how we can manage applications that are not working the way we would want them to work. In fact, sometimes you get an error message like this one that says it's just stopped working. Sometimes the application just disappears, just gone. It's just not there anymore. We've all had that. We're working along, typing along, boom, just click, it's gone. And we don't know where it went. It just disappeared completely. One of the things you want to do at that point, and probably the most important thing you can do before you start making changes, before you start turning things on and off again, before you start reinstalling applications, it would be nice to know what's going on. It'd be nice to get some clues about why that application disappeared, because I think you can agree, applications simply disappearing, not normal, not something that should be happening. However, we have a utility in Windows that records everything. And if you become very, very good at managing this utility, you will be surprised at how much information you can pull out of Windows. So this is what you want to do is go to the event log, go to event viewer, and be able to see exactly what was happening and did that application give a particular error, and put that information into the event log. This is the important part of this. Another thing you can do, sort of this was designed for me, somebody who doesn't want to go through the event log. You don't understand what you should do with the event log. Event log's just too complicated. There's Reliability Monitor. Reliability Monitor, it takes all of the information from the event log and puts it into a very easy to follow front end. So it's a very easy way that you could start here. And there are links in here that will drill you down into the event viewer if you wanted to do that. Pretty important too. Now, ultimately, you may end up reinstalling the application. You may end up rebooting the computer. In the chat room, people are saying, well, yeah, we'll just reboot the computer. That'll fix it. It probably would. I agree with you. Rebooting the computer 99 times out of 100, that will fix it. But that wasn't the question, was it? This is the important consideration on this exam. The question said, which of these would be the best next step for troubleshooting this issue? I think we would all agree that rebooting the computer probably would fix it. What's going to happen after that? It's going to happen again. We're going to get another phone call. We're going to have to go back down to their desk. We're going to have to do this again. So the real key with these questions is knowing what is the next thing you should do to be able to do that. So that's important to have that capability there. And perhaps that's something that you can focus on too as you're trying to figure out what should we do with these. Some folks in the chat room asking if I have a Discord. I sort of do. I'm planning to do more with it. Like anything else on my website, if you go to professormesser.com/Discord, I think the invitation still works there. But there's many other Discords out there. A very popular one is out on the Reddit. The CompTIA subreddit has their own Discord. You can find that at reddit.com/r/CompTIA. That's another good one. And I'm on a bunch of other Reddits too. I'm not going to tell you which ones I'm on. You're just going to have to find them and see which ones. The rest of them had nothing to do with technology, it seems. If I'm playing a game, I get on that game subreddit. Now I have a bunch of subreddits that I'm on. I get that 1 hour a night where I can do something like that. That's what's there. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's do another question though. We can fit another one in, I think. I would like to fit another one in now that we've looked at reliability monitor. There's a close-up of reliability monitor. If you haven't used reliability monitor, very useful tool. Remarkably useful, actually. Surprisingly useful if you've never used it before. Pretty nice to have that there. You may find things you had no idea was going on inside of that. So the chat room is insinuating I'm a Fortnite addict. That is the one thing, and you'll find this when you get to be an old guy like me, the games that rely on the twitchy fingers where you have to do everything quickly, probably not going to be your forte. Probably not going to be what you lead with. Fortnite, probably not. And you don't want to see me doing the dances anyway. I think we're all agreed there. Let's do another question. Here we go. Question asks, the documentation associated with an accounting application states that the user cannot make copies of the application except for backup purposes. Which of these would describe the location of this documentation? Is it FOSS, DRM, NDA, PII, or EULA? Those are your 5 different options. The documentation associated with an accounting application states that the user cannot make copies of the application except for backup purposes. Which of these would describe the location of this documentation? Is it FOSS, DRM, NDA, PII, or EULA? Those are your 5 different options. So as you ponder that, in the chat room, they're trying to guess which of these games I am involved with these days. I am all over the place. Sometimes I just like to get on the Xbox. Usually that will be Division 2 or it will be Destiny 2. These days I'm at my computer a lot, so it tends to be EVE Online. And then it's just sort of whatever happens in my world to be able to make those happen. So that's usually where I'm spending and really spinning my tires. I'm not good at any of them right now. So there you go. Not really interested in the WoW Classic. I loved WoW Classic. I was one of the first players of World of Warcraft back in the day with version 1.0. But I just am not, and I was with it through the years, but I've not revisited it lately. I certainly would not go back to the classic version, which just doesn't have a lot of appeal for me. I like some of the newer things they added to it. I think it's gotten better over the years. I think there is a nostalgic part of that. I get it, but I'm just not one to go back to the nostalgic piece of that. Rainbow Six Siege, again, kind of twitchy. I get in here. Let's start the game. Oh, I'm dead. Well, that was a surprise. Let me respawn. Oh, I'm dead. This is me. I'm doing you a favor by playing Rainbow Six Siege. I'm not doing myself a favor. You're the one making the points off of me, it seems. So there you go. You don't need spreadsheets to play EVE. No, there's lots of good stuff in EVE Online. The documentation associated with an accounting application states that the user cannot make copies of the application except for backup purposes. Which of these would describe the location of this documentation? How would we do? What would we do? Let me see if I can get to the right answers for these. If we have a look, we can start to see how we did. Well, 63% of us said EULA, 30% of us say DRM, 3% said NDA, 2% said FOSS, and 1% said PII. So once we get after those first two, really a problem. EULA and DRM. Well, this is licensing and figuring out what rights and permissions you have to do different things with applications can be an involved process. So you should be aware of some of these things. If you're using some software that's free and open source, that would be FOSS. That was one of your options here, but something that is free and open source is probably not going to tell you that you have a limited number of backups or you can't copy the application. Free and open source almost always means that you can copy the application. It's free and it's open source. You can do whatever you'd like with it. So that's not the right answer with that one. One of the things that we're looking for is something dealing with the end user licensing agreement, which dictates how the software can be used. And end user license agreement is the EULA, the EULA. So anything in the application, how you use the application, when you can use the application, who is allowed to use the application, whether you can make backups of the application, can you copy anything legally dealing with that application goes into the EULA. Now, if you're someone who works in a corporate environment and you're purchasing software, one of the things you will do is ask the vendor, please provide me with the end user license agreement. I need my legal team to look at it, which you should be doing, by the way. If you have more than 10 people using this application, you really should have somebody go through the legalese. There may be things inside of that legal agreement that don't fit well with the way that your business operates. And it's not uncommon to give the vendor, the manufacturer of that software, some options and say, well, we don't like this line. What if we change that? And they might say, okay, we're fine with that. Change that. We'll have our legal teams check off. Yep, sign it. We're good. Happens all the time. So end user license agreement is not something that is written in stone to be able to do that. One of the other options, 29% of you chose DRM, the digital rights management. This is an electronic version of how this software can be managed, rather than the app that's stating that the user cannot make copies. And it's really telling you, please, you, Mr. User, are not allowed to make copies. What DRM does is say, we're not going to let you make copies. We're going to physically prevent you from using certain aspects of this software using this digital rights management. Very common to do with media, with movies, with music, but it can also be used for applications as well. The other option that we had here that wasn't listed here was NDA. That's a non-disclosure agreement. That's usually something that two people or two entities will agree to say, we're going to show you some information, can't talk about it. It's a non-disclosure agreement to be able to do that. So your answer here is the one everybody chose. In fact, you guys must be very familiar with the end user license agreements that nobody ever reads and scrolls through and clicks OK to. There's sometimes some good stuff in there you should be aware of. Might not hurt you to at least have a look at most of that and be familiar with it, having those things there. So those are your 5 options. EULA was really your best option there. The digital rights management's not something that the user would be able to control. It's controlled by the application itself. Hopefully that has kind of filled in a lot of the details of things you needed to know associated with those types. And all 5 of those things are listed in the exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those as well. I've talked over and over about the exam objectives. It was very amusing to me. I say this multiple times in this study group every month. It is in my first video of every course, talks about the exam objectives. And I always talk about you need to have this list. And it was very funny. I was reading a post on the CompTIA subreddit. I think it was yesterday or today, where somebody said, you know, I didn't download this. I suddenly downloaded it. It's huge. It's full of information. I thought it was just a summary of the 5 things you need to know. You know, there's 5 different topics, 5 different domains, and that's it. They didn't realize it's a 20-page document with detailed breakdowns of every single thing you need to know in every single section. It's all in there. If you don't have a copy of the exam objectives, you're doing yourself a disservice. You should get it immediately. This should be the first thing you read through before you start your studies. It should be the last thing you read through before going into the exam, because it makes an excellent checklist of the things you need to know before you sit down for your exam. Make sure you spend time understanding what's expected of you. It's all in the objectives. I've got a link right to the CompTIA website. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives. Takes you right over there. So a very quick way to find those objectives. Well, we're in overtime. We've gone an hour. We're doing another one of these study groups next month, though. I've got one for the 220-1001, the 220-1002. Stop back in on September 10th and September 12th. We'll do another one of these with lots of questions. But stick around. We got another hour of this. We're going to turn this around, and I'll have you ask me questions. We'll have our call-ins and questions from the chat room over the next hour or so. In the meantime, you can, of course, go out to Twitter. We do an A+ question every weekday. See how your A+ skills are. Don't forget about all the videos on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Smash those buttons, as the kids like to say. My course notes are also available. They're available at professormesser.com/1000 notes. And if you are watching this after September of 2019, you can always go out to the calendar on the website and find out when the next live event is going to be. You can find that at professormesser.com/calendar. Thanks for being here. Thanks for answering the questions. Thanks for all the other things that we do in this hour and sticking around. Stay around again. We got another hour of Q&A. We'd love to have you ask some questions and listen into what other people are asking. Thanks for being here this time. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Well, I now need to get the phone lines up and running. It'd be helpful if I got my face there. There we go. All right. Well, that was a good session. I managed to make it through. Now I need to get things up and running. Let me make sure. One of the things that I like to have is host a show here. I have to call into my own show. And as soon as I call into my show, I'll let you call into my show as well. So we'll step through these different options as we're going through this. I'm sure I can manage this. I should probably have someone do this for me. There's just nobody else here. I'm the only one. Oh, now we're calling in. See that? Hear that noise?
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to type in some things here on the screen.
Enter your 6-digit.
All right, we're going to do that. And we're going to type this in, and it should say,
welcome.
Thank you. That's nice of you. So if you're someone who would like to call in to the show, in the continental United States, you can call 855-785-RJ45, and you'll be calling in on our voice lines. If you're anywhere outside of the United States and you would like to call in for free using Skype, no Skype minutes are required. You put a +1 at the beginning of that. So put +1, 855-785-7545. It's the number that's right there on the screen, and you can call in as well. Plenty to do there. One of the things that you'll also find if you call into that line, it'll just put you on hold. There's a number of you calling in right now. So put you on hold. You should be able to hear the audio that's there. So plenty that you can do there to call in. We've already got some folks calling in. Let's go to Travis in Washington. I'll pick up on the line. Hi, Travis. Are you there?
Hey. Yeah. Hey, James. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you great. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah. So I had a couple questions. I unfortunately just had missed the 902 exam. And I was wondering if a couple of things. One, I know you listed the course objectives in green and yellow and purple yesterday. I was wondering if you're going to make that available. And then also, I know you have the list of 1,400 questions for the 902 and 901.
Right.
When would we expect those for the 1,000 series?
Well, that's rather presumptuous, Travis. But you're spot on. You're absolutely correct with that. First, let's answer the first question first, then we'll shift gears to the other. One of the things I do whenever there is a new course that comes out is obviously I have to build a video course to go along with this. I build the whole breakdown of it. And when I do that, I have to know what things are new and what things are not new on the exam. So when I first get my hands on the objectives, the first thing I go through these objectives and I try to map out what things are new and which aren't. You know what? That's not even the latest one that I chose that I go through. Let me show you my working model of this. Here we go. So I've got a version of this that has what you mentioned there, the colors that I go through. So let me show you my version of the objectives. So I go through all the objectives, and every time there's an objective that is the same as the old version, I color it with a green color just to tell me that there probably won't be a lot of changes I have to make when I bring that over. I do change some of the things on some of these slides, but some of them I don't have to. So I change over those things. Well, then there's other pieces on here, though, that are brand new. As I mentioned, 20% of this 1002 exam have new objectives from the old version. So anytime I see there's something new, I, on my screen, color it in yellow. So you can see, for instance, in the very first section, which is compare and contrast common operating system types and their purposes, 32-bit versus 64-bit, was in the last version, but RAM limitations and software compatibility were not specifically spelled out in that version. And so I go through all of the objectives. I'll just flip through the different pages, and you could see, yeah, about 20% of what you're seeing on the screen is yellow. That's where that 20% number comes from, is those objectives. Some sections, last two sections, completely new in this version of the exam. So it would be nice to make these available. I can't make this PDF available on my site because the PDF itself is CompTIA's product. It's their PDF. It's copyrighted CompTIA, so I can't do that. But I would be more than happy to. I can easily take the items that are on here, because this is a document that is spelling out certain exam objectives. Those objectives, the facts of this, are not copyrightable, thankfully, in the United States. So I can take the same content and color it and put it into a page. That's something I just need to think about doing. Maybe I can work this weekend, because you're not the only one to now ask me of that now that people have seen it. And I can make that available to folks. I just need to put some pages up so some of that would be there, because it would be nice. If you were already studied for the 902, you really just need the Delta, right? So that would show you the Delta piece.
Yeah, I was hoping that you had like a bridging course available for us folks that just barely missed the 902, 901.
It would be nice.
Over to the 1000.
And it's something I have considered. The problem is that there's really not a lot of people that get caught like you did before, when time came out. There are, of course, people that did, but the number of people that got caught is a very small number. And then I would imagine 6 months from now, nobody's going to need it anymore. You're done. You've already made the transition. You've already gotten the certification. You're already on to the next thing. So it would have limited availability to people to build an entire video course. And one of the things you'll notice is that some of these yellows are just sort of peppered in to a sea of green. I mean, look at section 1.3, where you're summarizing general OS installation considerations. It's all the same as the old version, except they added HFS and they added swap partition. So I could make a video which just had those topics in it, but it would be so disjointed, and people would look at it and go, why are you just giving me a video with HFS and swap partition in it? There's no context. It doesn't go along with the other pieces of it. So ultimately, we decided not to do that, just to do a full-blown course. But I understand exactly what you're asking for, and it would be nice. It's just not practical.
It's just really difficult for me if I have to go through and learn about, ring tip spring,
right?
This and that, all over again.
Well, I will try really, really hard to find a way to do this weekend where I can put this set of exam objectives on my site, because I think it would be kind of nice to have the objectives on my site anyway, and then I can make it so that it's color-coded so that you can see which one of these things happens to be new, so that you could just go through the yellow things and you're done. And maybe that's a good way to approach it.
Yeah, that'd be the best for me. Is there any way, because one of the things that kind of kicked my butt in the 902 was I had some difficulty with the simulation questions. I thought I was doing everything right, but just CompTIA just wouldn't let me do what I wanted it to.
You're not the only one to mention that. Some of the questions on the exam are not just matching or fill in the blank. You're put into a Windows front end, and you have to move around the Windows desktop in a system that is not the Windows desktop. So it's an emulated system that has somewhat of the same feel and look of Windows. But as you and many other people have found, when you click certain things on the screen, it doesn't react the way you would expect it to react. You almost have to, it's like using one of those old click around games where you're just trying to find something on the screen that you can interoperate with. And unfortunately, it's just a sad part of the way this exam is set up, is that particular part of that question is a challenge to be able to figure out which things to click on. I don't have a good answer for you other than just be prepared for those types of things. Use your time management, flag those questions and come back to them. Try to get as much of the exam done around that. And then when you run into those problematic performance-based questions, come back to those. That'll be the last thing you do.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it just didn't work out for me. I was wondering if you knew if those questions are more points than the other questions.
We don't. CompTIA does not tell us anything about their grading system. Some people have told me that they intentionally did not answer any of them, went and finished all of the multiple choice questions and submitted and still passed. I don't have any way to validate that. It doesn't sound too far out of the realm of possibility if you got all of those multiple choice questions right, but they just don't even tell us whether it's a make or break. If it's only worth 2%, we just don't know. So you just have to do as much as you can and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's basically what I did.
So the other question you had was regarding the question and answer book. For the 900 series, I created this pop quiz collection, which for better or worse, was just sort of this overwhelming number of questions that came from the exam objectives. And it was a huge number. It was massive. And my plan is to, by the end of the calendar year, have another QA book of that type. I don't know if it's going to be quite the same overwhelming avalanche of questions. I'm tending to lean to more of a set of practice exams that are almost a perfect image of the experience that you would get on a real A+ exam. The same type of cadence of questions, the same style of the question, the same voice of the question, same difficulty level of an actual exam. I'm tending to lean that direction, but either way, I hope to have some book available by the end of the calendar year that may not fit into your schedule with your studies, but that's I look at the clock and I look at the calendar, and that seems to be where it's going right now.
Yeah, for me, I'd like to get this done within the next 6 weeks so I can get a job and get back to work.
I wish I could write things that quickly for you, but it's all physics problem at this point.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, James. Appreciate the help.
Thanks, Travis. Best of luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep, that's just missed that 902 and having to get back over with the 1002. Kept to kind of start over again with these. Such a challenge, and being able to do that. Quickly from the chat room, some folks had a number of questions about that. Yes, the yellow on the screen were the things that are new in the 220-1002 exam versus the 900 series. That's what that is. So anything that's yellow, brand new on the exam. See, not a lot. 20% was new for that, being able to have that there. I will honestly work towards getting something like that done. I have a lot of little things I want to do this weekend that might fit into it. I need to find a quick way to do it. I just haven't sat down and thought, should I do this with CSS and just quickly bang it out and have it done? Maybe that'd be the easy way to do it, because there's not much. I can make the whole thing green and then just go back and highlight the yellow ones. I think that may be the easy way to do it. Also in the chat room, someone asked, CompTIA, as you've probably seen, talk a lot about approved third-party studying resources. I think the way they do it now is they don't approve resources. They tell you that you should not use unapproved resources. Well, it's not, I don't think they technically approve or unapprove. In the exam objectives themselves, there is a link that they show. Let me see if I can find it now. Let's have a look, see if I can hunt it down. So they will tell you that, let's go all the way up here, the CompTIA Authorized Materials Use Policy. And they tell you you should not be cheating. That's effectively what they're telling you here. If you get a copy of the actual exam questions, you should not use them. And that's pretty much what they mean by unauthorized materials use. So make sure you don't use unauthorized materials. Is this an authorized? Well, they don't really authorize the studying materials on the internet, but I can assure you that I have legitimate study materials that are not brain dumps, that do not copy actual questions. Everything you read on my site are things that I personally write. They are all original. All the questions we went through today are all questions I wrote this weekend. Every time we do a study group, every time you see content from me, everything that's in my books, everything that's in my videos has all been written by me personally. So I know not only is it not something that copies CompTIA, but I'm hoping that you see that it's something that has a quality to it that provides value when you're trying to study for your certification exams. Hopefully that will give you some context as to what CompTIA is looking for when they go through that. Let's go back to the phones. Callers you've been holding for so long. Let's go to Connecticut 860. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Drea from Connecticut-ish.
Welcome. What can we do for you?
First of all, I just want to say thank you because you helped me pass my A-plus a few years ago.
Congratulations.
And I periodically will still watch your study groups for A-plus, even though I have my A-plus. I just earned my Network Plus yesterday.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes. I just had a question regarding the CEUs for renewal of certifications. I'm on the CompTIA website. I've tried to look at this a few times.
Yes.
It is kind of confusing.
No, it's not kind of confusing. It's very confusing.
Yeah, they don't make it easy for your CEUs. I mean, it's like write a web blog or attend a class. And personally, I can't afford to take another, a course for a few $100s because you might as well just take the test over. So I was wondering if you knew for the stackable certs, what other ways one could renew for the CEUs for their Network Plus or for the Security Plus or whatever going up besides taking another exam.
It is so confusing that I made a video that steps through all of the major ways that you could renew your certification. So what you want to hunt for on the YouTube is how to renew your A Plus, Network Plus, or Security Plus in just a few hours. That's the title of the video. I had to make it as descriptive as possible. So it goes. I really did.
Did you make that?
This is one I did this recently. So this was back in February when I published this, and I did it because what you were saying is what other people were saying is that this thing is all over the place when you go to the website. What options are really good options? What are the things you should be doing? And the other thing that CompTIA did that I didn't think a lot of people realized is they do now give you an option where you can renew your certification literally in just a few hours. And this, I made this because someone came to my site and said, I have my A Plus, my Network Plus, and Security Plus. These all expire in 2 days. I haven't collected any CEUs. What can I do? And I said, well, have you just downloaded? Have you paid for and downloaded CertMaster CE? Because what CompTIA says in 4 to 6 hours, you can renew everything and you're done. And he says, huh? What? And he went out to the CompTIA website. And so I thought it would be good to document collecting CEUs, to document taking a higher level exam, taking an exam from a third party. There's advantages and disadvantages to doing all of these things. And now that they've introduced the CertMaster CE, there's really almost everybody, I think, is going to be doing that. It's very quick. It's very relatively inexpensive. And it's something that, as the video says, you can do in just a few hours. So that's why I made that video. It'd be worth your time. It's only almost 7 minutes long for a video. You can even speed it up so it runs through pretty quick. And I try to hit the highlights, give you the details, and tell you where you can go on the CompTIA site to get more info.
All right. Thank you. I will absolutely look into that. I was just wondering, though, because I did take a course, a Network Plus course, not from a college, it's from a training center. And if I hadn't have passed the Network Plus yesterday, I was wondering if that course would count, because the only thing that they have listed on CompTIA is the CertMaster.
So
I don't know if other courses count.
The real catch for you is going to be, well, now that you passed the Network Plus, if you already had your A Plus, then your A Plus has now been renewed to the point where you passed your Network Plus. So you started a new 3-year counter at that point.
Right.
So the real thing, though, is that if you're collecting CEUs as the method you're going to use for renewal, you have to collect those CEUs after you pass the exam. So if you took your Network Plus class and then passed the exam, then none of your Network Plus class counts for a CEU renewal for your Network Plus certification. You would have to take the class after you earned your Network Plus for it to be valid.
So if I had taken another class after I passed the Network Plus, so say if I take a Security Plus class,
Yep.
does it matter who gives the class, I guess is the question, which facility, or does it have to be CertMaster?
It does not matter. CompTIA tells you it doesn't matter on their website. They sort of, like you have said, it's kind of difficult to follow on their site because they give these authorized training providers. If you take it from these training providers, it is totally acceptable for CEUs. If you take it from someone else, you can still log them as CEUs. CompTIA may come back to you and audit those CEUs and say, do you have a syllabus of this class? Do you have a description of the class and who gave it, so we can confirm that the information in the class qualifies? And it's usually something they're just checking off and making sure that you're not taking a class on how to make exotic coffees and applying that into a CEU. So if you have that information, you can confirm with them. It works out just fine, whether it's one of their certified providers or not.
Okay, thank you so much for your help.
Congratulations on your Network Plus. Always a good one to have. And that's a great jumping off point for anything else you want to do in IT. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's one of those things that I always think about when I'm thinking about where do I go with what I want to do next. And I've said many times, get that networking knowledge. You can use that everywhere. You can use it with databases. You can use it with servers. You can use it with security, and you can use it with networking in itself, a valuable skill to have. So always work through that too. To the 757 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. I know you've had you on hold for 19 minutes. Thank you for holding, caller. Are you there? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm here.
There you are. Hi.
Hi. Hello.
What can we do for you? What's your question?
Yeah, my name's Margaret.
Hey, Margaret. What can we do for you?
Okay, so I have been. This is also new for me. This is my very first step into the IT career.
Nice.
And my husband is a cybersecurity analyst, and he's been guiding me and everything.
Excellent.
And supporting me basically, and I'm so glad I found you. So I'm about to take my A+ exam, and I was studying for the 902 and 901 series, but I couldn't, get around to it. But now I already paid for my exam for the 1001, 1002. Now my question is, I went to the Professor Messer's site, Objectives, and it directed me to the CompTIA A+ thing.
Right.
Now, what I don't understand is the performance-based questions have like a question and listings of, okay, for example, given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components, and it gives you a list of all the components. Now, how do you, because this is my very first time taking an exam like this, a performance-based exam is what I mean. So I'm not sure what they expect me to do or what is expected of me to do. That's my very first question.
Okay.
Sir.
One of the things that's nice about these exams, I say nice, but it's something that maybe people don't realize, is the vast majority of the exam is multiple choice questions. So you're still going to get, just like the questions we did today, where you get, they ask you a question and you can answer A, B, C, or D. That is the vast majority of the exam. At the very beginning of the exam, you will get a handful of performance-based questions. You might get 2 questions, you might get 3, you might get 5 performance-based questions. Somewhere in there, maybe a little more, maybe a little bit less. But they're going to be questions that go back to the topics that you already knew about. And many of them are questions like the very first question we did on the study group, which was a matching question. You know, it's not a fill in the blank. It's not a drag and drop. Maybe they have you draw a line, or maybe they do have you drag and drop something, or maybe you're putting in the matching questions, but it's just not a multiple choice. So don't be thrown too much by the term performance-based question. All it really is we're going to ask you the same type of information. We're just going to ask you in a different way.
Okay. So my second question to you, sir, is that I was moving to security, but while reading for my A plus, I started to get interested in networking and everything like that. What do you think would be a preferred or an easy start for me into the IT world, networking or security?
Well, one of the things you'll find, I'm going to speak, and you've probably gotten an earful of this from your husband as well, because he already has a leg in the security world of things. I was also someone who worked in IT security on the vendor side with Network Associates / McAfee / Network General, and ultimately with Palo Alto Networks as a systems engineer for their firewalls. So one of the things that was almost universal with the people I talked with, because I go back in the industry into the networking world, specifically with doing protocol analysis. So I worked with tons of people doing tons of networking, and then from there moved into security. And what I found is all of my customers followed almost exactly the same path. And it turns out that in IT security, you need a massive foundation in networking to be able to be successful. That's because the firewall, the intrusion prevention devices, the VPNs that you configure, the IPsec connections, all of the things you deal with IP addresses and access control lists, it all touches the network and has a huge networking component. So I've told people on my study groups before, and I think it's just as valid now as it was then, that the more knowledge you have in networking, the better and easier it's going to be for you when you move into an IT security role, just because there is that huge foundation of networking there.
Okay. So my very last question, sir, is would you advise anyone to take a CompTIA Network Plus exam other than a CCNA exam?
It's a common question. They are two very different animals. The Network Plus certification is an entry-level certification into the networking world. It's not specific to anybody's particular technologies. For instance, it's not a Cisco exam. It's not a Juniper exam. It's not an HP exam. It's more of a generic exam that kind of gives you an overview and an overall perspective of getting into networking. Network Plus is the exam, for instance, you would take if you were moving into a help desk role or into a network operations center help desk role. Once you get to that point, though, and in fact, it sort of sounds like the direction you're going, you may want to have a much more specific knowledge base in networking. And these days, Cisco's CCNA certifications are really that very solid foundation in networking, but it is a very different exam. It is much more complex, and I would say much more difficult than the Network Plus exam. Currently, it's two separate exams. It's about to be consolidated into a single, much harder exam, in my opinion. It is a completely different thing. It's not a situation where you're trying to figure out, which one do I take? Do I take the Network Plus or do I go with the CCNA? Two completely different animals. You have to really step back and look at what do you want to do. If your direction is going deep into networking, you want to be a network administrator. You want to have detailed knowledge of how to configure a router and a switch at the command line. You want to understand all the protocols that are associated with that. And you have in your mind a goal of going into IT security, then maybe Cisco makes more sense. Sometimes people prefer doing Network Plus first to get sort of an understanding of networking and kind of get the terminology down. And then once they have Network Plus, they will build on that by going to get the CCNA. That's another completely valid path. It really depends on what your primary goals are, your time frames, and just how hard of an exam you want to take at any particular time.
So the statement that goes, or the saying that goes, take a CCNA exam over a Network Plus exam, because most of the things out there are Cisco. Most of the computers out there, most of the machines out there are Cisco. Does that make sense?
It doesn't make any sense at all. It's a rather ridiculous statement.
Most of the networking devices.
You don't take a certification exam based on what other people want to do. You take a certification exam based on what your next step is going to be. So there is a completely valid reason for taking Network Plus, and if your direction and what you're trying to do fits that best, go take the Network Plus. If your direction is more along the lines of managing Cisco devices and you know that's the direction you want to go take the Cisco exams. You have to decide what your goals and objectives are and find the right path for you. Sometimes that goes Network Plus. It's Cisco. It's not an either-or situation. These are two different certifications for two different kinds of goals and objectives, and you need to find out which one fits best for you.
Professor Nessa, thank you so much for all these amazing materials you put out here, because it's really encouraging for me. And it's so easy for me to read your notes. I bought your notes. I did everything.
Thank you.
I would not lie to you. Initially, I was, watching the Mike Myers when I was going to do the 901, 902 series, and it wasn't so bad and everything. But, with your notes and everything, I was always jotting down and everything. But with your notes, I stopped jotting down. It was easy for me to. So this is how I read. I look at your notes and I listen to you on my earphones, and I'm looking at your notes. So whatever you're saying, I'm comparing it with your notes, and it just stays with me. I really want to appreciate that. And just know that you have really encouraged me to go ahead and take this exam. I paid for it last week. My exam is on the 20th of September. And I'm so excited. Thank you so much. And I'm following everything that you're doing. Thank you so much.
So glad to hear. Thank you, and best
for
of luck.
answering my questions, too.
Absolutely. Best
Thank
of luck.
you so much. Thank you so much.
That's one of the things I always tell people, and it's hard for me to say it because I'm in the industry, or I was in the industry. I guess now I'm in a completely different industry. How's that work? It's still IT. But IT, for me, was a line of work, a type of job that you could have that has no ceiling. There's just whatever you want to do, you can go do it. And then as it turns out, it pays really well, which doesn't hurt either. And the more you do in it, the more they want to pay you, which also is very nice. So you've got such flexibility. And I look at every other line of work you could go into. Medicine, go into medicine. There's great things you can do in medicine. I'm not saying that any other line of work is bad, but if you go into medicine, there's a certain ceiling there that you can only go so far. If you go into manufacturing, there's a certain ceiling associated with that. If you go into sales, sometimes there's a ceiling associated with that. IT, though, just is so open. There's so many different directions you can go. And in my career, I start down one path, and you can just change paths as you go. So much flexibility. Why would you not do that? It just makes perfect sense to me to go down those paths and think about how you would do the next thing. There's another thing I've brought up on the study groups before is that you don't have to worry about what you want to do 10 years from now. And in fact, it's almost ridiculous to do that in our industry because 10 years from now, it's a completely different world. So many things have changed in 10 years. It's almost more important for you to decide what you want to do next. It's a question they never seem to ask you when you're in the interview. They always want to ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? The better question is, what do you want to do next? And figure out, how do I get there? And then once you're there, you can ask yourself, what do I want to do next? And then you work towards that path. One of the things that I think about back when I got into IT, let's just look at reality and look at life and look at how things go through the years. There was no internet. So I could not have thought what I really want to work towards is building out a publishing company where I can put training on the internet and talk to people on a live stream. It didn't exist. There's no way I could have thought to get there. You go one step at a time. Sometimes you don't know what that next step is going to be. Sometimes it's a surprise. Sometimes it's a good surprise. Sometimes it's a bad surprise. But you always have a path. And that's one of the great things I love about working with information technology is I never had to worry about, have I hit a wall? Is there nowhere else to go? Are there no other opportunities available? There's more than enough opportunities in IT That was one of the advantages I really found, and one of the reasons I created these courses, and one of the reasons I continue to do this. I think it's a great place to be. So keep doing what you're doing, keep studying, keep getting those certifications, keep learning more about this, become an expert in the things you're interested in, and all of the other things around you will work themselves out. I promise you. It seems to work that way every single time. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here on the study group. This was one of the nicer study groups we do this week, where we do a twofer. We do the 221,001 and 221,002 in the same week. So thank you for joining me. If you came for both of these, you're as crazy as I am. So thank you for doing that. Come back next week. We're doing a Network Plus study group on Wednesday. We'd love to have you here. I'll do questions for the first hour, and we'll take calls for the second hour and do it all over again. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the A Plus Study Group.